My name is Bayano, or Bayaya, Baya, Yaya, whatever you like to call me within those different options. I think everything else you'll kind of get to know over time. This is kind of an introduction video, be able to get to know me, but also I'm going to be talking about one of the fundamental points of understanding that I really base most of how I conceptualize the world around, and it's the root of a lot of the work that I do. So that thing I'm talking about is the phenomena called logos. Now, the way I explain it and the way that I've grown to understand it and internalize it might be very different from the way that you've grown to understand it and internalize it. And I hope that you feel liberated to share uh, exactly what that point of view is, because it's important. But the way that I understand a logos is a creation, but it is an emanation of God. So it is a distorted product of God, and it's a reflection of God, right? And in that, anything that logos creates is also a logos itself. It's a sub logos, and that sub logos has all the same abilities, distorted depiction of God, right? Because it is a part of God. It's not going to be the absolute perfect rendition, point by point, because it's a part of God, and have a purpose that is reflective of the God's purpose. It is essentially a reflection of its creator, right? And that sub logos can create other things, and that creation will then be the sub logos. Alongside that, right, this understanding goes back to the big logos, the Most High, the greatest creation to ever create, and which created itself, is essentially reflecting its own path, its own journey of ups, downs, creations, adolescence, maturing, aging, and then dying, that same cycle we all go through, as well as the ups and downs of conflicts, ups and downs of the way we identify ourselves. All those things reflects itself in all of the journeys of everything that is created under it, because we are products of that creation. What we produce and what we experience are going to be also parallel reflections of that ultimate most high experience, that ultimate most high path, that ultimate most high journey. And so in reflecting on the fact that these patterns are going to repeat themselves all through the universe, we can then learn lessons through these ups and downs, these stories, these songs. I like to call them songs because sometimes they can record themselves in the universe like, little waves. But then when you learn the relationships between these waves and between these vibrations, you uncover a story, you uncover a lesson, you uncover a piece of the grand puzzle, And I mean, you see it in divination systems, of learning, the ins, outs, ups, downs, offs, and ons of certain signals will teach you lessons through stories, allegories. That goes back to almost everything in life is allegorical or has some sort of meaning that transcend the physical. It's deeper than that, OG. That understanding then makes me feel like it's my job to learn all the lessons, or at least take heed to the lessons when I come across them. I feel like there are certain lessons that I might not grow to articulate because I might subconsciously kind of already dominate in that area, and that's when we kind of see different life lessons. When we talk about having to learn certain life lessons and then seeing our lives and our I guess spiritual essence elevate once we do learn those lessons. That's like one of the stories. You want to dominate to become a whole person, essentially. Once you learn that same lesson of self-realization, because it goes back to the Big Bang, where essentially how ancient Egyptians see it, right? There was the beginning, where nothing really existed. There was the waters of Nu, and that waters of Nu was scary and sad because there was a whole lot of self-doubt. There was a whole lot of procrastination, hesitation, not loving yourself, not knowing yourself, and then eventually the Most High God became aware of himself, and in that awareness immediately created, right? And his very first materialized creation was the Word. And so when you look up the definition of the Logos, it's also going to be the Word of God. But that was the first materialization of God's creation, was the Word. That exact journey of self-realization, right, to us is considered like something that happened in milliseconds of time. So if it happened like this, how do we even explain that journey? And I've been getting into quantum physics because I believe, it's understood that quantum physics is the explanation of what happened since the beginning of time, and really explaining the subatomic particles and their relationships to each other throughout the creation of the universe. That's fire. You know what I'm saying? But what we then see is that even from what it took to create the universe all the way to what we see in nature, the same lesson that's mirrored and is it magnified? Multiplied. There it is. It's multiplied all across the universe, these different lessons, these different fractions. I call them ratios, you know what I'm saying? The way that these different things have relationship to each other, and when we really understand the relationship, we simplify it. That's just how math works. When there's a fraction, when there are, for every 5 there's 4, that's a fraction of 4/5, and for every 5 there's 4. That is the more simplified version of, for every 8 there's 10. So when we simplify it, that's when you get down to the very basic lesson in relationship that's being taught through story, through experience. Rationally, they project across different planes in regards to how you see a logos or a creation, because it goes even deeper into things like the birth, adolescence, maturing, aging into elderhood, and then eventual death of things like organizations, things like human bodies or human races, or what we call subspecies, right? All these different groups, all these different identities that we choose to create, once they are created, they are now subject to that same path, that same journey of growth. They're subject to those same lessons that are innate, because you need to master balance. That's essentially what these lessons teach you all together, is to master balance, because it is in the balance of two different extraordinaries, right, that create. That's just science. Contemplation and action. You don't want to act without thinking, because you don't create. You don't want to think without acting, because you don't create. But when you balance yourself between the thought and the creation, the contemplation and the execution, that's when you find the perfect balance that allows creation. When I see that, and then I start to study history, and I start to study the different lessons that we've had to learn, the levels of cognitive dissonance that we step into under the scope of things like creations or bodies of creation, how we are stagnating ourselves, because a lot of times we either are grouped under things or group ourselves under things, but then don't want to be subject to those same lessons, to those same ups and downs, don't want to learn through that connectivity, don't want to understand that the way issues like self-worth manifest in relation to greater bodies of creation, like races, right? Like, how does insecurity around self-worth manifest along greater bodies of people? We see how we work through those issues ourselves. How would that then apply to those grander bodies of people?